Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open one of the Bible's most beloved books, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to investigate a really fascinating theory, that the Book of Psalms isn't just a random collection of poems, but actually a carefully crafted, hidden story.
Okay, let's just dive right in. For most of us, right, the Book of Psalms is kind of like a spiritual playlist. We go to it when we need comfort or maybe some inspiration. But what if we've been listening to it on shuffle this whole time? What if there's a specific order, a deliberate design that's meant to guide us on this incredible journey? That's the mystery we're exploring today.
You know, the typical way to read Psalms is to treat it like a big anthology, a greatest hits collection. We pick out the one that fits our mood for the day, read it, and then we move on. But what if that's like listening to a masterpiece album on shuffle? Yeah, you still hear all the great songs, but you totally miss the story the artist was trying to tell from beginning to end.
So, to solve this mystery, we've got to act like detectives and follow the evidence. And our first set of clues? Well, they're hidden in plain sight, the different names the book has had throughout history.
This is really interesting, right off the bat. The original Hebrew name, Tehillim, literally means praises. That points to what the book is about, its ultimate goal. But the later Greek name, Psalter, means song sung to a harp, which focuses on how it was composed. So, which one is it? A book of praise or a musical composition? Well, the answer seems to be both.
And when you actually look at what's inside, that name Praises gets even more curious. Because as you can see, this book is not just a bunch of happy songs. It's almost perfectly balanced. About a third are sad prayers for help, another third are those songs of praise we'd expect, and the final third are these really thoughtful, meditative poems. So it's not just one note, it's the entire spectrum of human emotion.
Okay, so the emotional content is clearly balanced. It's not just one thing. But what about the arrangement itself? Is it just a random jumble, or is there a blueprint? Let's start looking for a hidden structure.
Now, this is our first huge clue. The Book of Psalms isn't actually one book, it's 5. And these divisions aren't something modern scholars came up with, they're ancient, mentioned in texts that are thousands of years old. This tells us that someone, a long time ago, wasn't just collecting poems, they were intentionally organizing them into smaller volumes.
And check this out. Buried deep inside the text, we find what is basically an editor's note. At the very end of Psalm 72, it says, "The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended." I mean, that's a massive clue. It tells us that at some point in history, that was considered a complete collection of David's work. But, and this is the kicker, there are more Psalms by David later in the book. This proves the entire collection was put together in stages by editors who were carefully shaping it over time.
And this is where the evidence for an intentional design becomes, well, kind of undeniable. Just look at the patterns in who wrote what. In books 1 and 2, David is the main voice, with 55 psalms. But then you get to book 3, and he basically vanishes. The temple choirs, Asaph, and the sons of Korah, they take over. And then in books 4 and 5, it's the anonymous or orphan psalms that make up the vast majority. Come on, that's not random. That is careful, deliberate organization.
So let's put the pieces together. We have a 5-book structure, we have little editor's notes tucked away in the text, and we have these super clear authorship patterns. When you lay all these clues out on the table, a grand narrative starts to emerge. This isn't just a book, it's a story.
When we actually map out that emotional journey, the story becomes crystal clear. The first 3 books, they are heavy with struggle. I mean, look at this. Prayers for help, what we call laments, they outnumber songs of praise by more than 2 to 1. The story starts in a place of darkness and despair.
But then, in the final 2 books, the story takes a turn. The whole dynamic completely flips. Suddenly, songs of praise and confidence are the dominant voice, more than doubling the pleas for help. This is the narrative climax, a clear, definite journey toward hope. So, the conclusion is pretty much unavoidable. This isn't just a collection, it's a curated journey. The ancient editors of the Psalms deliberately arranged all this material to guide the reader from a place of crying out for help to a place of confident praise. The very structure of the book is telling a story.
Okay, so the Psalms have a hidden architecture. That's a really cool discovery, but what does it actually mean for us? How does knowing this change the way we should read this ancient book? You know, this modern analogy from Dr. Fred Putnam really helps make sense of it. Think about it. No poet today just throws their poems down a flight of stairs and publishes them in whatever order they land. Of course not. They arrange them for effect. to create a larger meaning. And that same artistic intention was at work in the Psalms. The order is part of the art.
This discovery really changes everything. We can't see the Psalms as just a box of disconnected puzzle pieces anymore. We have to see it as the finished picture, a single, unified book where the order really matters. It means we should read each psalm in its context, understanding that it's just one step on a much larger journey, a journey of redemption.
And this is the profound takeaway. The very shape of the book, that journey from lament to praise, is itself a message. It argues that the shape of our own lives, and maybe even the universe itself, is ultimately redemptive. Hope isn't just a theme in a few of the Psalms, it's the architectural foundation of the entire book.
So the next time you open up the Psalms, maybe don't just pick a random chapter. Ask yourself, where am I in the story right now? And how does knowing that this whole book is an intentional journey from pain to praise, how does that change what this one poem means for me today? It's a question that can totally transform the way we read this masterpiece.